Right now, we are following breaking news here at WDSU. Former Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards has passed away at the age of 93. His family releasing a statement early this morning saying that he passed away peacefully this morning at his home in Gonzales, surrounded by family and friends.
Remember, the former governor had just last week placed himself in hospice care following a trip the day before to the hospital. They thought he was showing signs of improvement, but of course passing away this morning at 93 because of ongoing respiratory problems. Louisiana's only four-term governor who had quite the storied career and just life in general.
Absolutely, and 1 month shy of his 94th birthday. Our own Travers Mackel has more right now in his life and legacy that he's left behind.
Edwin Washington Edwards was arguably the most polarizing political figure in Louisiana history. The four-term governor was plagued by corruption allegations throughout his career. He evaded any convictions until the early 2000s, when he was found guilty of racketeering charges and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. WDSU was there the day Edwards was found guilty. The day he went to prison,
facing a very large, long prison term.
And the day he was released in January 2011.
I have been tried more times by the United States government than anybody else in the history of our country.
But it easily could have never happened. Born in Marksville in Avoyelles Parish, the son of a sharecropper, Edwards set out to be a preacher and even preached at his hometown church, Church of the Nazarene. Edwards briefly attended LSU, joined the U.S. Navy, and served at the end of World War II. He later returned to LSU to earn his law degree. Edwards' political career began in 1954 when he was elected to the Crowley City Council. In 1964, he was elected to the state Senate and served for 1 year before winning a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. In 1971, Edwards won the Democratic primary for governor, beating J. Bennett Johnston in a runoff. Edwards then defeated Republican David Treen in the general election. From 1972 until 1980, the charismatic and witty Edwards served 2 terms as Louisiana governor.
Laissez les bon temps rouler, let the good times roll.
A highlight for Edwards, a man who prided himself on keeping the budget balanced, was replacing the state's outdated 1921 Constitution and putting an updated one in front of voters. It passed in 1974 and went into effect the very next year. Edwards was elected to a 3rd term as governor in 1983, defeating Republican incumbent David Treen with 62% of the vote. Edwards was the first person ever elected 3 times as the state's governor. Then he won his final term, 4th one, in 1991.
I have just taken the oath of office as governor of Louisiana for the 4th time. I have not words sufficient to express the gratitude which I feel for this privilege and for this opportunity.
During his time in office, Edwards faced federal indictments for mail fraud, obstruction of justice, and public bribery. He stood trial on charges twice, in 1985 and 86, but was never convicted.
How wonderful it is as the truth finally comes out and we see what has really been happening behind closed doors.
It wasn't until after Edwards left office that he was no longer able to evade prison time. Edwards, along with his son Stephen and 4 others, were indicted on numerous bribery and extortion charges stemming from a riverboat casino licensing scheme. Edwards was found guilty on 17 charges, sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, and fined more than $200,000. Edwards never wavered from his claim of innocence. Edwards reported to prison in October 2002 and was released to a halfway house after serving 8 years. Shortly after his release, the 83-year-old Edwards married his prison pen pal, 34-year-old Trina Grimes Scott, his 3rd wife.
I do think, as Edwin does, that things will be completely different the second time around.
In October 2013, a reality show starring the governor and his new bride premiered. Met with a big build-up, then little interest. The short-lived The Governor's Wife ended its run after just 8 episodes. It focused on the post-prison life of Edwards, his new wife gelling with his grown children, and Trina Edwards' pregnancy. Eli Edwards was born August 2013. The following year, Edwards announced his return to politics, going after a congressional seat with a stated desire focus on health care improvement.
I'm old enough to know and young enough to go, and they're going to see some action from Edwin Edwards when he gets to Congress in January.
But Edwards' political charm had run out. Republican Garrett Graves, who still holds the seat, blew out Edwards, winning by more than 25%. After the congressional defeat in 2014, Edwards vowed that he would still live an active life. A coffee table book loaded with pictures of people from Bill Clinton to Elvis Presley was one of his projects announced. In early 2015, Edwards announced his desire to get back into real estate.
There's a great deal of development going on between Lake Charles and Slidell along I-10 and I-12.
During the last interview with WDSU, Edwards reflected on his life and his legacy.
Of course, I think about my mortality, and I think any reasonable human being thinks about that. And let me say this, I think about my mortality, and for that and many other reasons, I try to do it right. I try to live right. And I don't think on the way to heaven or hell, whichever way I go, I'm going to meet anybody who can look me in the face and say, I mistreated them, or I was unfair, or I lied about them. I always tried to help people, even people who had done me bad.
Well, in part of his last words, he says, I've lived a good life, had better breaks than most, had some bad breaks too, but that's all part of it. I tried to help as many people as I could, and I hope I did that. And I hope if I did, that they will help others too. I love Louisiana, and I always did. And his wife, Trina, also said his last words were actually to his son, Eli, his 7-year-old son, Eli, who would tell him, I love you every single night. And that, again, was his last words to Eli was, I love you too.
Former Louisiana governor, 4-term governor Edwin Edwards, dead this morning at 93 years old. According to a spokesman for the family, funeral arrangements are pending this week. They will include the former governor lying in state at the Rotunda at the Louisiana State Capitol. Visitation from the public will be announced as well. That day has not been set at this time, but a very somber day here in Louisiana, especially here in New Orleans.
And of course, we'll have much more on his life coming up on WDSU News at noon, and you can read more about Edwin Edwards on our website right now, WDSU.com.
Let's now return you back to the Today Show.